Princess Lyrelei stood on the observation deck of Nexus Prime, watching the small human ship dock with the massive space station. The vessel looked so ordinary compared to the gleaming Zephyrian warships that surrounded it. She had never seen a human before, and she felt curious about these strange creatures that had somehow defeated the Korthak raiders. The Korthak had been the terror of 3 star systems. They were brutal warriors who lived only to fight and conquer. For 200 years, no one had been able to stop them. They destroyed entire worlds and enslaved millions of beings. Then suddenly, 6 months ago, they simply vanished. The few survivors spoke of humans with fear in their voices, but no one understood how such a young species could accomplish what the mighty Zephyrian Empire could not. "Remember, daughter," Emperor Valdris said as he approached her, "these humans are nothing more than primitive creatures who got lucky. They will accept our terms because they have no choice. We are offering them protection and guidance. They should be grateful." Lyrelei nodded, but something felt wrong. If the humans were so primitive, how had they traveled across the galaxy to reach Nexus Prime? How had they learned their language so perfectly? The translation devices showed that the human delegation spoke flawless Zephyrian, not the broken phrases she expected from a young species. The formal meeting took place in the Grand Council chamber. The room was designed to impress visitors with its massive crystal dome and floating platforms. Representatives from 12 different species sat in their designated areas, all watching as the humans entered. There were only 3 humans in the delegation. 2 wore simple black uniforms, but the third man walked differently. He was not tall or impressive looking, but something about the way he moved made Lyrelei pay attention. His dark hair was neat and his brown eyes seemed to take in everything around him. When he smiled, it looked friendly, but Lyrelei noticed that his eyes never stopped moving, always watching, always thinking. "I am Captain Marcus Chen," the human said as he approached the central platform. "I speak for the Terran Coalition in these negotiations." Emperor Valdris stood from his throne, his blue skin shimmering in the chamber lights. "Human, I am Emperor Valdris of the Zephyrian Empire. We have summoned you here to discuss the terms of your surrender." Lyrelei expected the human to show fear or anger, but Chen simply smiled wider. "I think there has been a misunderstanding, Your Majesty. We are here to discuss a peace treaty between equals, not a surrender." The Emperor's face darkened. "Equals? You are a species that learned to fly between stars only 50 years ago. We have ruled space for over 1,000 years. You will accept our protection, pay tribute, and follow our laws. In return, we will allow you to keep your homeworld." Chen nodded as if he was considering the offer carefully. "That is very generous, Your Majesty, but I am afraid we must decline." Silence filled the chamber. No one had ever refused the Zephyrian Empire so calmly. Other species had fought, screamed, or begged, but this human acted as if he was declining an invitation to dinner. "You refuse?" the Emperor asked, his voice rising. "Do you not understand what we are offering you?" "I understand perfectly," Chen replied. "You want us to become your servants. You want to control our trade, our military, and our government, but we prefer to remain independent." Admiral Korvex, the Emperor's military commander, stepped forward. "Human, you do not seem to understand your situation. We have 300 warships in this system alone. You have brought one small vessel. How do you expect to resist us?" Chen looked at the Admiral with interest. 312 ships, actually. The Judgment of Stars arrived 2 hours ago, but I assume you have not updated your count yet." Lyrelei felt a chill run down her spine. How did the human know about ship movements that were supposed to be secret? "You have been watching us," Admiral Korvex said, his hand moving toward his weapon. "Of course," Chen said casually. "Just as you have been watching us. It is only natural. But I think we have been more thorough in our observations." The human reached into his jacket, and immediately 20 Zephyrian guards raised their weapons. Chen moved slowly and pulled out a small data pad. "Please do not be alarmed. I have a gift for His Majesty." "What kind of gift?" the Emperor demanded. "Information," Chen said, placing the datapad on the platform. "A complete analysis of your fleet positions, officer rotations, and strategic capabilities. We thought you might find it interesting." Admiral Korvex grabbed the datapad and activated it. His face went pale as he read, "This is impossible. This information is classified at the highest levels." "Nothing is impossible if you know how to look," Chen said. "For example, Admiral, your flagship, the Star of Victory, has been having problems with its quantum drive for the past 3 weeks. Your chief engineer has been working 16-hour days trying to fix it, but the replacement parts will not arrive for another month. The Admiral stared at the human in shock. How could you possibly know that? Chen's smile never wavered. We know many things, Admiral. We know that Captain Zealith on the cruiser Windwalker is worried about his daughter's illness. We know that Commander Prax has been skipping his duty shifts to gamble in the station's lower levels. We know that your supply ships are carrying 30% less food than they should, because someone has been selling the surplus on the black market. Each revelation hit the Zephyrian delegation like a physical blow. These were private matters, personal secrets that even the Emperor did not know. How could the humans have learned such things? You have been spying on us, the Emperor accused. We have been learning about you, Chen corrected. It is what humans do. We watch, we listen, and we understand. It is how we survived on our homeworld, and it is how we deal with new friends in space. Friends? Admiral Korvex laughed harshly. You think we are friends? You are nothing but insects compared to us. Chen nodded thoughtfully. The Korthak said something very similar. They called us weak, soft, pathetic creatures who would break at the first sign of real war. They were quite confident in their superiority. The room fell silent at the mention of the Korthak. Everyone knew that story, but no one understood it. How did you defeat them? Lyrelay found herself asking before she could stop herself. Chen looked at her with those dark, calculating eyes. We understood them, Princess. We learned what they feared, what they loved, what they believed, and then we used that knowledge to help them destroy themselves. You destroyed an entire species, Emperor Valdris said, and for the first time, there was uncertainty in his voice. They destroyed themselves. Chen replied. We simply provided the information that allowed their natural instincts to take over. The Korthak were warriors, but they were also paranoid and suspicious. They could not trust each other. When they began to believe that their own allies were betraying them, they did what warriors do. They fought. You manipulated them, Lyrelay whispered. We offered them the truth, Chen said. Some of their leaders were planning betrayals. Some were keeping secrets. Some were lying to their own people. We simply made sure that everyone knew these truths at the same time. The Korthak did the rest. Admiral Korvex stepped closer to Chen. Are you threatening us, human? Chen looked genuinely surprised. Threatening you? Admiral, I am trying to prevent a war. I am offering you something much better than conquest. I am offering you partnership. Partnership with insects? The Admiral sneered. Partnership with beings who ended the Korthak threat without firing a single shot? Chen replied calmly. Partnership with a species that values knowledge over force, understanding over conquest. Think about it, Admiral. In all your years of service, how many problems have you solved through violence? And how many new problems did that violence create? The Emperor stood up, his massive form towering over the human. Enough of this talk. You will accept our terms or we will take what we want by force. Chen sighed sadly. Your Majesty, that would be most unfortunate. Not just for us, but for your people. You have built a great empire. But empires built on force alone do not last. They collapse when they meet something they cannot simply crush. And you think you are that something? The Emperor demanded. Chen shrugged. I think we are something different. Something you have not encountered before. But perhaps I am wrong. Perhaps force is indeed the answer to every problem. If that is what you truly believe, then you must do what you think is right. The human delegation turned to leave, but Chen paused at the doorway. Oh, Admiral Korvex, you might want to check the loyalty of your crew on the Star of Victory. Some of them have been sending messages to their families about how tired they are of this war. They miss their homes. They wonder if their empire is worth the cost of constant fighting. As the humans left, Lyrelay stared after them, her mind racing. She had expected primitive creatures who would beg for mercy. Instead, she had met a human who knew more about her people than they knew about themselves. A human who spoke of ending the mighty Korthak through understanding rather than weapons. For the first time in her life, Princess Lyrelay felt afraid, not of human weapons or human ships, but of human minds, and she suspected that Captain Marcus Chen was only the beginning. Lyrelay could not sleep. 3 days had passed since the meeting with the humans, and she could not stop thinking about Captain Chen's dark eyes and calm voice. Every time she closed her eyes, she heard him talking about the Korthak, speaking of their destruction as if it was a simple mathematical problem that he had solved. She stood in her private chambers aboard the Imperial flagship, staring out at the stars. Her father had ordered the fleet to return to the Zephyrian homeworld, and now they were in orbit around the blue and silver planet where she had been born. Everything looked normal, but nothing felt the same. "Computer," she said to the room's artificial intelligence system, "I need all available information about Captain Marcus Chen of the human species." "Accessing files, Princess," the computer replied in its neutral voice. "Warning. Most information about human military personnel is classified as restricted access." "Use my Imperial override codes," Lyralai commanded. Files began appearing on the wall display, and what she read made her blood grow cold. Marcus Chen was not just a diplomat. He was a military strategist who had graduated first in his class from the Terran War College. He had served as a tactical advisor in 12 different conflicts before the Korthak situation. But it was his psychological profile that made her hands shake. The report described Chen as having an extraordinary ability to understand and predict behavior patterns. He could analyze a culture's strengths and weaknesses within weeks of first contact. His specialty was what humans called asymmetric warfare, winning battles by using the enemy's own nature against them. "Computer, show me the detailed records of the Korthak conflict." New files appeared, and Lyralai began to read with growing horror. The Korthak raiders had been a loose confederation of warrior clans that lived for battle and conquest. They had no central government, only temporary alliances between powerful war chiefs who constantly competed for dominance. Chen had spent 8 months studying captured Korthak prisoners and analyzing their communications. He had learned their language, their customs, their fears, and their pride. Then he had done something that no one else had thought possible. He had convinced the Korthak that their greatest enemies were not the humans, but each other. The records showed how Chen had carefully planted false information suggesting that various Korthak leaders were planning betrayals. He had forged communications that appeared to come from trusted advisors. He had arranged for accidental discoveries of hidden weapons caches that seemed to belong to rival clans. Each piece of false evidence was carefully crafted to match what the Korthak already believed about their competitors. Within 6 months, the mighty Korthak Confederation had collapsed into civil war. Clan fought clan, leader murdered leader, and fleets destroyed each other in massive battles that had nothing to do with humans. By the time the fighting ended, fewer than 10,000 Korthak remained alive out of a population of nearly 50 million. "Princess," came a voice from her doorcom system, "your father requests your presence in the strategy room." Lyralai took a deep breath and tried to calm herself. "I will be there shortly." She found Emperor Valdris standing over a holographic display of human space, surrounded by his top military advisors. Admiral Korvex was pointing at various star systems and talking excitedly about attack routes and fleet deployments. "Ah, daughter," the Emperor said as she entered. "We were just discussing our response to human defiance. Admiral Korvex believes we can crush their entire civilization within 3 months. The humans have only 47 known colonies," Admiral Korvex explained confidently. "Their fleet consists of perhaps 200 ships, most of which are cargo vessels converted for war. We have the firepower to glass every human world if necessary." "Glass their worlds?" Lyralai asked, shocked. "Father, you mean to commit genocide?" "I mean to teach the galaxy that no one defies the Zephyrian Empire," the Emperor replied firmly. "These humans think they are clever because they defeated some savage raiders. They need to learn their place in the order of things." "Admiral," Lyralai said carefully, "have you studied the tactics Chen used against the Korthak?" Korvex waved dismissively. "Psychological warfare, propaganda, lies, and deception. The tools of the weak. When facing a superior force, such tricks become meaningless. But what if they are not tricks?" Lyralai pressed. "What if the humans really do understand us better than we understand ourselves?" Her father's blue skin darkened with anger. "Daughter, I am disappointed in you. Are you so easily frightened by primitive aliens? The humans are nothing more than clever animals who learn to speak. Then explain how they knew about our ship movements, our personal communications, our private problems," Lyralai demanded. "How did Chen know things that even you did not know about your own officers?" "Spies," Admiral Korvex said firmly. "They have agents among our people. We will find them and execute them." "What if there are no spies?" Lyralai asked. "What if they simply watched and learned? What if they understand how we think? how we make decisions, how we react to pressure. The Emperor studied his daughter with concern. You sound as if you believe these humans are superior to us. I believe they are dangerous in ways we do not understand, Lyrelei replied. Father, I have been reading about their history. Humans spent thousands of years fighting each other on their homeworld. They developed ways of war that we have never seen. They learned to win battles without fighting them. Impossible, Admiral Corvex declared. War is war. You destroy your enemy's ability to fight and you win. Everything else is just delay and weakness. Lyrelei activated her personal datapad and projected images into the air above the strategy table. These are records from the human archives, data they freely share about their own history. Look at this battle called Cannae, where a smaller army destroyed a much larger force by understanding how their enemies would react. Look at this conflict called the Cold War, where two great powers fought for decades without firing a single shot at each other. Look at these economic wars where humans destroyed entire nations using nothing but trade agreements and financial manipulation. The military advisors looked uncomfortable as they studied the alien concepts. These were types of warfare that made no sense to the Zephyrian mind. How could you win a battle by retreating? How could you destroy an enemy by giving them what they wanted? How could numbers and wealth become weapons? This is all very interesting, the Emperor said dismissively. But it changes nothing. We have 3,000 ships. They have 200. We have weapons that can crack planets. They have clever words. The mathematics of war are simple, daughter. Are they? Lyrelei challenged. Then why did the Korthak lose? They had more ships than the humans. They had better weapons. They had centuries of experience in warfare, but they still lost because Chen understood something about them that they did not understand about themselves. The Korthak were savages, Admiral Corvex said. We are civilized. We have discipline, order, and unity. We cannot be turned against ourselves like some pack of wild animals. Lyrelei felt a chill of fear as she realized what Chen might already know about her people. The Zephyrian Empire was not as unified as it appeared. There were 3 major factions among the nobility, each vying for influence over the Emperor. The military had its own internal rivalries between the fleet commanders and the planetary defense forces. The outer colonies constantly complained about taxation and resource allocation. The religious orders disagreed about fundamental questions of doctrine and law. All of these tensions were hidden beneath the surface of imperial unity, but they existed. And if Chen was as skilled as the records suggested, he would have identified every crack in their society. Father, she said urgently, I think we should reconsider our approach to the humans. Perhaps we could offer them a different kind of alliance, one that respects their independence. The Emperor's expression hardened. Daughter, you disappoint me greatly. I sent you to that meeting to observe human weakness, not to develop sympathy for our enemies. Perhaps you need time to remember your loyalty to your own people. I am loyal to our people, Lyrelei protested. That is why I fear what will happen if we underestimate the humans. Enough, the Emperor commanded. Admiral Corvex, prepare the fleet for immediate departure to human space. We will show these creatures the power of the Zephyrian Empire. And, Princess, you will accompany us so that you can witness their surrender and remember why we are the masters of this galaxy. As the meeting ended and the advisors filed out, Lyrelei remained behind, staring at the holographic display of human colonies. 47 worlds scattered across dozens of star systems, defended by a small fleet of converted cargo ships. It should have been a simple conquest, a brief campaign to crush an upstart species. But she kept thinking about Chen's calm voice and knowing eyes. She kept remembering how he had spoken about the Korthak not with hatred or fear, but with something almost like pity, as if their destruction had been inevitable once he understood what they truly were. What had he learned about the Zephyrians during their brief meeting? What weaknesses had he identified? What plans was he already making? Lyrelei tried to push these thoughts away, but they would not leave her alone. Somewhere in human space, Captain Marcus Chen was preparing for war. And she had the terrible feeling that he was not afraid of the approaching Zephyrian fleet. He was expecting the Imperial fleet, assembled at the edge of human space like a metal storm, cloud blocking out the stars. 3,000 Zephyrian warships arranged themselves in perfect formations, their weapons powered and ready for battle. Lyrelei stood on the bridge of her father's flagship, watching the tactical displays that showed the overwhelming superiority of their forces. Magnificent, is it not? Emperor Valdris said as he joined her at the observation windows. the greatest armada ever assembled by the Zephyrian Empire. No force in the galaxy could stand against such power. Lyrelei nodded, but her stomach churned with worry. For 2 weeks they had traveled through hyperspace toward human territory, and during that time, she had continued studying everything she could find about human warfare. The more she learned, the more afraid she became. Humans did not fight the way other species fought. They did not meet superior forces head-on in glorious battles. Instead, they found ways to avoid fighting entirely, or to make their enemies defeat themselves. They specialized in what they called asymmetric warfare, using unexpected tactics to overcome larger, better-equipped opponents, Father, she said carefully. Have our scouts reported any unusual human activity in this system? Nothing of importance, the Emperor replied. A few cargo ships fled when our advance units arrived. Some automated defense platforms powered down rather than face destruction. The humans appear to be avoiding battle. That worries me, Lyrelei admitted. Her father looked at her with disappointment. Daughter, you have been acting strangely ever since we met with that human diplomat. Are you afraid of these primitive creatures? I am afraid of what we do not understand about them, Lyrelei replied. Father, everything we know about human capabilities comes from their conflict with the Korthak. But what if that was not an example of their full abilities? What if it was just a test, a way to see how galactic powers would react? Admiral Korvex approached them, his expression confident and eager. Your Majesty, our long-range sensors have detected a human vessel approaching under a diplomatic flag. They are requesting permission to come aboard for negotiations. The Emperor smiled coldly. How convenient. The humans wish to surrender before we destroy their fleet. Very well, allow them to dock, but maintain full battle readiness. This could be a trick. An hour later, Lyrelei found herself once again in the presence of Captain Marcus Chen. He arrived aboard the flagship with the same 2 companions as before, still wearing that simple black uniform, still carrying himself with quiet confidence that seemed completely out of place given the massive fleet surrounding him. Your Majesty, Chen said with a polite bow as he entered the throne room, I thank you for agreeing to this meeting. I agreed to witness your surrender, Emperor Valdris replied from his elevated throne. I assume you have come to beg for mercy for your species. Chen looked genuinely puzzled. Surrender? Your Majesty, I am afraid there has been another misunderstanding. I have come to offer you one final opportunity to avoid unnecessary bloodshed. The Emperor's blue skin flushed with anger. You dare to threaten me. Human, look around you. You are surrounded by 3,000 warships. Your entire species has fewer than 200 vessels, most of them converted cargo haulers. How do you expect to resist us? Numbers are not everything, Your Majesty, Chen replied calmly. The Korthak had superior numbers as well. We are not the Korthak, Admiral Korvex declared. We are disciplined, united, and experienced. Your psychological tricks will not work on us. Chen nodded thoughtfully. You may be right, Admiral, but I brought you a gift anyway. He reached into his jacket and produced another datapad, a complete analysis of your current fleet deployment, including detailed psychological profiles of your senior officers. Admiral Korvex grabbed the datapad and activated it. As he read, his face went pale. This is impossible. How do you know about Captain Vex's gambling debts? How do you know about Commander Zalthi's illegal modifications to his ship's weapon systems? How do you know about the food shortages on the Outer Rim vessels? We know because we have been watching, Chen said simply. For the past 2 weeks while your fleet traveled here, we have been monitoring your communications, analyzing your behavior patterns, and studying your social dynamics. You are not as united as you believe, Admiral. The Emperor leaned forward on his throne. Explain yourself, human. Chen activated a holographic projector and images filled the air above the throne room. Your fleet contains representatives from 17 different worlds, each with their own cultural traditions and local loyalties. Your officers come from 3 distinct social classes that rarely intermarry or socialize. Your Naval Academy produces graduates who compete rather than cooperate. Your promotion system rewards individual achievement over teamwork. Those are strengths, not weaknesses, Admiral Korvex protested. Competition makes us strong. Diversity gives us flexibility. Perhaps, Chen agreed, but it also creates fault lines. For example, the captains from the core worlds look down on officers from the frontier colonies. The nobility-born commanders believe they deserve better assignments than those who earned their ranks through merit. The fleet sections from different planets use different tactical doctrines because they trained at different academies. Lyrelai felt sick as she realized where this was leading. You are going to try to turn us against each other just like you did to the Korthak. Chen looked at her with what might have been respect. Princess, you are very perceptive, but I am not going to try anything. I am simply going to provide information. What your people do with that information will be their choice. What kind of information? The Emperor demanded. Chen smiled sadly. The truth, Your Majesty. For instance, Admiral Korvex, did you know that Captain Thesis of the Starhammer has been sending private reports to the Imperial Council about your tactical decisions? He believes you are too aggressive and reckless to command such a large fleet. Admiral Korvex spun around to stare at Captain Thesis, who stood among the other senior officers. Is this true? Captain Thesis, a thin man with silver markings on his uniform, straightened defensively. I have submitted routine reports as required by regulations. Routine reports? Korvax demanded. You have been questioning my authority behind my back. I have been expressing concerns about fleet safety, Thesis replied. Your attack plans show insufficient regard for casualty projections. Chen continued as if nothing had happened. Captain Thesis, are you aware that Admiral Korvax has been secretly recording conversations with his senior staff? He suspects that someone has been undermining his authority, and he has been building a case to court-martial several officers after this campaign ends. Now Captain Thesis stared at the Admiral with shock and anger. You have been spying on your own officers? Security requires vigilance, Korvax said, but his voice lacked its usual confidence. Chen activated another display. Commander Vex, you might be interested to know that Admiral Korvax has recommended that you be transferred to a supply depot after this mission because of your financial difficulties. He believes that officers with personal debts are security risks. Commander Vex, a heavy-set officer with tired eyes, looked stricken. Admiral, I have served loyally for 20 years. My debts do not affect my duty. Your debts make you vulnerable to bribery, Korvax replied. But he was beginning to look uncomfortable as more and more of his officers stared at him with suspicion. Perhaps, Chen said, but Commander Vex's real problem is not his gambling. His real problem is that he discovered irregularities in the fleet's supply purchases. Someone has been inflating costs and skimming profits from equipment contracts. Commander Vex was planning to report this after the campaign, but Admiral Korvax learned about his investigation. The throne room erupted in angry voices as officers began accusing each other of corruption, disloyalty, and betrayal. Emperor Valdris watched in horror as his perfectly disciplined fleet command structure collapsed into chaos. Silence, the Emperor roared, and gradually the room grew quiet. Human, how do you know these things? Because I have been listening, Chen replied. Your people talk, Your Majesty. They complain about their superiors. They gossip about their rivals. They worry about their futures. All species do this. The difference is that we have learned to hear what they are really saying. These are lies, Admiral Korvax declared, but his voice shook. Are they? Chen asked. Every fact I have shared can be verified through your own records. Every accusation I have made is supported by evidence that your own people created. I have not invented anything, Admiral. I have simply connected information that already existed. Lyrelai stepped forward, her heart pounding. Father, we must end this now. Can you not see what he is doing? He is destroying our unity without firing a shot. Your daughter is wise, Chen said, but it may already be too late. You see, while we have been talking, my ship has been broadcasting detailed dossiers about every officer in your fleet to every other officer in your fleet. Right now, 3,000 captains are learning uncomfortable truths about their colleagues, their superiors, and their subordinates. The Emperor stood up, his massive form trembling with rage. The command center of the Imperial flagship had become a scene of controlled chaos. Officers rushed between stations, shouting reports about conflicts breaking out across the massive fleet. Admiral Korvax stood at the central display, his face twisted with rage and disbelief, as he watched his perfectly organized armada tear itself apart. Report, he demanded as Emperor Valdris and Princess Lyrelai entered the room, followed closely by Captain Chen and his small escort. Admiral, we have 37 ships reporting internal security situations, came the reply from a junior officer. The Starhammer has arrested Captain Thesis for treason. The Windwalker has placed Admiral Vex under guard for corruption. The Battlecrown has declared Captain Zor unfit for command and is demanding his replacement. How is this possible? The Emperor asked, his voice barely controlled. Chen spoke quietly from behind them. Your Majesty, I told you that we had been broadcasting information to your fleet. Each captain received detailed files about their fellow officers, complete with evidence of misconduct, disloyalty, and criminal behavior. Most of this evidence came from your own security reports, personal communications, and financial records. Admiral Korvex spun around to face the human. Those records are classified. How did you access them? We did not need to access them, Chen replied calmly. We simply observed and analyzed. When Captain Thesis sends encrypted messages to the Imperial Council, the encryption hides the content, but not the fact that the messages exist. When Commander Vex accesses gambling sites from his personal quarters, the data trail is easy to follow. When officers make unauthorized modifications to their ships, the power consumption patterns change in detectable ways. You have been spying on us for months, Lyrelay realized. We have been learning about you, Chen corrected. It is what humans do. We watch, we analyze, and we understand. Your people were so focused on watching our military capabilities that they never considered that we might be studying their social dynamics. The tactical display showed the fleet formation, breaking apart as groups of ships maneuvered away from each other. Red warning indicators marked vessels that had gone to battle stations, while yellow markers showed ships that had declared internal emergencies. Admiral, another officer reported, Captain Zorvan of the Death's Hand is refusing to acknowledge your authority. He claims that the evidence against you proves you are unfit for command. What evidence? Korvex demanded. Chen activated his datapad, and new information appeared on the main display. The evidence that shows you have been embezzling funds from the fleet medical supplies budget to pay for illegal weapons upgrades on your personal yacht. Also the recordings of your private conversations where you expressed contempt for officers from the outer colonies, calling them frontier trash, who should never have been allowed into the Imperial Navy. Admiral Korvex's face went pale as his own words echoed through the command center speakers. The voice was unmistakably his, discussing his plans to clean out the undesirable elements from the fleet after the human campaign ended. Those conversations were private, he whispered. Privacy is an illusion when you are dealing with an enemy who understands how to listen, Chen replied. Admiral, you have been planning a purge of officers you consider inferior. Your targets know this now. They are taking defensive action. Emperor Valdris watched in horror as more ships on the display changed their status indicators. The mighty Imperial fleet was fracturing along exactly the lines that Chen had identified. Core worlds versus frontier colonies, nobility versus merit-based officers, different academic factions, competing political loyalties. This is impossible, the Emperor said. Our people are loyal. They would never turn against each other over mere accusations. Your Majesty, came a voice from the communication station. We are receiving a transmission from Captain Falith of the Righteous Fury. He is declaring that Admiral Korvex is a traitor and demanding that you remove him from command. Immediately. Your Majesty, another voice called out. Captain Xenos of the Star Strike is reporting that someone has hacked their computer systems and released embarrassing personal information about their crew. They are requesting permission to withdraw from the fleet until they can restore order. Chen watched the chaos with what appeared to be genuine sadness. Your Majesty, your officers are good people who are trying to do their duty. But they are also individuals with fears, ambitions, and loyalties that extend beyond their service to your empire. When those personal concerns conflict with military discipline, the personal usually wins. You planned this, Lyrelay accused. You knew exactly how we would react. I studied the data and made predictions, Chen admitted. But I did not force anyone to act. Every choice being made right now is being made by your own people, based on their own judgment of what is right and necessary. The Emperor turned to face Chen directly. What do you want from us? I want to prevent unnecessary death, Chen replied. Your Majesty, you can order your remaining loyal ships to attack my vessel, and some of them will obey. But while they are fighting me, the rest of your fleet will continue to fight each other. By the time the battle ends, win or lose, your empire will have lost the military power that keeps your enemies in check. What enemies? Admiral Korvex demanded. We have conquered all opposition, Chen shook his head. Admiral, your empire controls territory that was taken by force. The Kethari Republic still remembers when you enslaved their colonies. The Nexian Trade Federation still resents the tariffs you impose on their merchants. The Orlani Collective still wants revenge for the destruction of their homeworld. The only reason they have not attacked you is because they fear your military power. Those species are weak, Corvex protested. They would never dare challenge us. They would if they believed you were vulnerable, Chen said. Admiral, how long do you think it will take for news of this fleet disaster to reach your enemies? How long before they realize that the mighty Zephyrian Empire has destroyed its own navy through internal conflict? Emperor Valdris stared at the tactical display where his fleet continued to fragment. Ships that had served together for decades were now pointing weapons at each other. Officers who had been friends were now treating each other as criminals. The greatest armada in galactic history was dissolving into chaos. Without a single enemy shot being fired, you have orchestrated our destruction, the Emperor said. Quietly, I have revealed what was already there, Chen replied. Your Majesty, your empire was built on the idea that force solves all problems. But force only works when the people using it trust each other completely. When that trust breaks down, the force becomes self-destructive. Then what do you propose? Lyra Lay asked, her voice barely a whisper. Chen looked at her with something that might have been respect. Princess, I propose that we work together to solve problems that cannot be solved by force alone. Humanity has learned that cooperation is more powerful than conquest. That understanding is more valuable than dominance. You speak of cooperation while destroying our fleet, Admiral Corvex said bitterly. I am offering you a choice, Chen replied. You can continue trying to hold your empire together through fear and force, fighting a war against your own people as well as your external enemies. Or you can consider a different approach. What approach? The Emperor demanded. Alliance instead of empire, Chen said. Partnership instead of conquest. Mutual benefit instead of one-sided domination. Your Majesty, you have spent 1,000 years trying to control other species through superior firepower, but control through fear only works as long as you remain the strongest. There will always be someone stronger eventually. The communication officer looked up from his station with panic in his eyes. Your Majesty, long-range sensors are detecting Cathari Republic ships entering the outer system. They appear to be taking advantage of our situation to probe our defenses. Emperor Valdris closed his eyes in defeat. The trap was closing around them, and he finally understood the full scope of what the human had accomplished. Chen had not just divided the Imperial fleet. He had timed the division to coincide with external threats. The Empire's enemies were already moving to exploit the weakness that Chen had created. What do you want from us? The Emperor asked again. But this time his voice held no anger, only exhaustion. I want to help you survive what is coming next, Chen replied. Your Majesty, your empire is about to face a crisis that cannot be solved with warships or weapons. Your enemies smell weakness, your allies are questioning your strength, and your own people are losing faith in your leadership. You need a new strategy. And you will provide this strategy? Lyra Lay asked. Chen smiled sadly. Princess, I will provide what humans always provide. Understanding. If you are willing to listen, we can teach you how to build something stronger than an empire built on fear. We can show you how to create a community of species that work together because they want to, not because they are forced to. As alarms continued to sound and reports of fleet disintegration continued to pour in, Princess Lyrily realized that Captain Chen had already won the war. Not through superior weapons or tactics, but by understanding her people better than they understood themselves. And the most terrifying part was that he seemed to genuinely want to help them. 3 months later, Princess Lyrily stood in the same throne room where she had first met Captain Marcus Chen. But everything had changed. The walls that once displayed the battle flags of conquered worlds now showed star charts marking trade routes and diplomatic agreements. The throne where her father had once ruled through fear and force sat empty, draped in the traditional mourning cloth of abdication. She wore the simple silver circlet of an empress, though she felt anything but imperial. The weight of ruling a crumbling empire pressed down on her shoulders like a physical burden. Outside the palace windows, she could see Cathari Republic ships in orbit alongside the remnants of the Zephyrian fleet, not as conquerors, but as reluctant partners in the new order that Chen had helped create. Your Majesty, came a familiar voice from the doorway. Chen entered the throne room, still wearing that same simple black uniform, still carrying himself with that quiet confidence that had once terrified her. But now she saw something different in his dark eyes. Not the cold calculation of a conqueror, but the tired compassion of someone who understood the cost of change. "Captain Chen," she replied, rising from her seat. "Or should I say Ambassador Chen now?" "Captain is fine," he said with a slight smile. "I am still the same person I was when we first met." "Are you?" Lyra Lay asked. "Because I am not. 3 months ago I was a princess in the greatest empire the galaxy had ever known. Today I am the empress of a broken confederation that exists only because you allow it to exist." Chen walked to the great windows and looked out at the mixed fleet in orbit. "Your Majesty, your empire was already broken." "It was held together by fear and force, which meant it could only last as long as you remained stronger than everyone else. That kind of power always ends eventually. So you decided to end it yourself," Lirlai said, and she could not keep the bitterness out of her voice. "I decided to help it transform into something that could survive," Chen replied. "Your Majesty, empires built on conquest always collapse, but communities built on cooperation can last for millennia." Lyrelai joined him at the window, watching Cathari and Zephyrian crews working together to repair damaged ships. It still felt wrong to see former enemies collaborating so easily, but she had to admit that the results spoke for themselves. The Cathari had not come as conquerors when the Imperial fleet destroyed itself. Instead, they had offered aid and partnership, knowing that a completely collapsed Zephyrian empire would create chaos that would hurt everyone. "My father died believing that you were a monster," she said quietly. "He never understood how you could destroy our military without hatred or anger." "I did not destroy your military," Chen said gently. "I revealed the cracks that already existed. The hatred and corruption and mistrust were already there, hidden beneath the surface. I simply brought them into the light." "And you knew this would happen from the beginning," Lyrelai said. "It was not a question," Chen nodded. "I knew that your empire was unstable. All empires based purely on force are unstable. They require constant military success to maintain legitimacy, and no military can win forever. Eventually, you would have faced a defeat that exposed your weaknesses. I simply chose the timing and circumstances. You chose to minimize casualties," Lyrelai realized. "If our empire had collapsed during a real war against external enemies, millions would have died." "Billions," Chen corrected quietly. "Your Majesty, I studied the fall of every major empire in galactic history. When they collapse through external defeat, the aftermath is always catastrophic. But when they transform through internal realization, the transition can be managed." Lyrelai thought about the past 3 months, the emergency negotiations, the careful redistribution of territories, the complex agreements that had prevented total chaos. It had been a delicate process requiring patience and understanding from all sides. But it had worked, largely because Chen and his human diplomatic teams had served as neutral mediators who somehow understood all the competing interests involved. "You planned this entire transition, did you not?" she asked. "I planned for multiple possibilities," Chen admitted. "But yes, I hoped that reasonable people would choose cooperation over destruction when given the opportunity." "Reasonable people," Lyrelai repeated. "Is that what you think we are?" Chen turned to look at her directly. "Your Majesty, you could have ordered a suicidal attack on human space even after your fleet fell apart. You could have tried to hold your empire together through even more brutal methods. You could have chosen to go down fighting rather than accept change. Instead, you chose to work with your former enemies to build something new. That seems very reasonable to me." Lyra Lee was quiet for a long moment, thinking about the choices she had made and the choices her father had refused to make. "Captain, may I ask you something?" "Of course, why do you do this?" "Why do humans involve themselves in conflicts between alien species? What do you gain from helping us transform our society?" Chen was quiet for a moment, and when he spoke his voice carried a weight of memory that Lyrelai had not heard before. "Your Majesty, my species spent thousands of years making the same mistakes your empire made. We built civilizations based on conquest and force. We created empires that oppressed other humans. We fought wars that destroyed entire continents. We nearly exterminated ourselves multiple times." "But you learned to change," Lyrelai said. "We learned that there was no choice but to change," Chen replied. "We learned that the alternative to cooperation was extinction. Not just for the losers of our conflicts, but for everyone. When we finally developed weapons that could destroy our entire planet, we realized that force had become too dangerous to use. So you developed other methods. We developed understanding, Chen said. We learned that most conflicts arise from fear, miscommunication, and competing needs that seem incompatible but actually are not. We learned that if you understand your opponents well enough, you can usually find solutions that give everyone what they really need. Lyrelei walked back to the throne, but did not sit down. Instead, she stood behind it, her hands resting on the carved armrests that generations of emperors had gripped while making decisions that affected billions of lives. My advisors tell me that other species are calling humans the new galactic superpower, she said. They say that you have replaced our empire as the dominant force in this region of space. Do you believe that? Chen asked. Lyrelei considered the question carefully. In the traditional sense, humans were not a superpower at all. They had a small fleet, limited territory, and no conquered subjects. But they had something else, the ability to influence events without using force, to resolve conflicts that others considered impossible, to turn enemies into allies through understanding rather than conquest. I think, she said slowly, that you represent a kind of power that we never understood. You do not rule through fear or force. You rule through being indispensable, Chen smiled sadly. We do not rule at all, Your Majesty. We simply try to help others find solutions to their problems. It turns out that this makes us useful to many different species, and useful people become powerful people, Lyrelei observed. Sometimes, Chen admitted, but power based on usefulness is different from power based on force. If we stop being helpful, people stop listening to us. That keeps us honest. A soft chime indicated that someone was requesting entry to the throne room. Lyrelei activated the door controls and Admiral Corvex entered. The former fleet commander looked older and more tired than she remembered. But there was something different in his bearing, a humility that had not been there before. Your Majesty, he said with a deep bow. Captain Chen, I wanted to report that the joint training exercises with the Cathari Republic have been completed successfully. Our crews are learning to work together more effectively than I would have thought possible. Thank you, Admiral, Lyrelei replied. How are the officers adapting to the new command structure? Corvex looked uncomfortable. It is difficult, Your Majesty. Many of our people still struggle with the idea of treating former enemies as equals. But the younger officers are adapting quickly. They seem to understand that the old ways led to disaster. Chen watched this exchange with interest. Admiral, may I ask what you think of the changes that have taken place? Corvex looked at the human who had destroyed his fleet and his empire, and Lyrelei was surprised to see something like respect in his eyes. Captain, I will not lie and say that I enjoy seeing the empire reduced to its current state. But I have to admit that your methods achieve something that our methods never could. What is that? Chen asked. Peace, Corvex said simply. For the first time in my career, I am not planning for the next war. I am not worried about enemies attacking our borders or rebellions breaking out in our colonies. The species that once feared us now work with us. It is strange, but not unpleasant. After the Admiral left, Lyrelei and Chen stood in comfortable silence for a while, watching the stars through the great windows. Finally, Lyrelei spoke. Captain, what happens now? Where do humans go from here? Chen pulled out his personal data pad and showed her a star chart. Your Majesty, our long-range exploration teams have made contact with a new species called the Vorthak Collective. They appear to be a militaristic empire that has been expanding aggressively in the outer spiral.